The notorious landlord company at the center of Venezuelan gang claims in Aurora now has one of their apartments in Denver closed. Now in Aurora, CBZ management had long been in trouble for neglecting properties, accused of essentially abandoning them, when the management company suddenly blamed a gang for their problems. Well, now Denver has shut down a CBZ property for a long list of safety issues.
It's been just a mess communicating with the landlord in terms of things happening in the apartment, whether it was people that didn't live here breaking in or damages. Honestly, I'm just happy that I can finally step away from it,
The city of Denver has ordered everybody out of the William Penn Apartments at 16th and Penn by tomorrow night. The city calls it an imminent hazard. The city says there is no heat there, no hot water, no gas, and no security on site to deal with the trespassers who frequently get into the building and either break into units or try to live in stairwells. The city says it has tried repeatedly to get CBZ management to fix up the place, fining them nearly $280,000 and putting liens on the property, and yet it's still a mess. CBZ management has blamed the Venezuelan gang Transgender for problems at multiple complexes they manage in Aurora, saying that the gang forced them to abandon those properties. The city of Aurora has disputed that timeline. And the city of Denver says there's no gang issue at that CBZ property in Denver.
There's no TDA involvement here. There were around 13 units. I believe of those 13, 12 were English speakers. There was one family that primarily spoke Spanish. These are just your everyday Denverites who are just living here, been living here for some time.
A court-appointed third-party receiver is going to take control of the property with the goal of getting it fixed up to code so it's safe. In the meantime, the city is helping place those tenants in hotels until they can find new places to live. Fencing divides neighbors, literally and figuratively. Few fences, though, are so divisive that state legislators feel the need to get involved. But a massive prison-style fence being built by a billionaire in Castilla County is now being talked about at the state capitol. Here's Evan Krugel with that.
The San Luis Valley is home to some of the most breathtaking views in Colorado. But it's not the Sangre de Cristo peaks that are catching the eyes of people who live here. Instead, it's a tall wire fence that's being installed around the property of an out-of-state billionaire named William Harrison, who owns more than 80,000 acres here.
This fence that this outsider from Texas is putting up is an anathema to the local community and to their right to have their history recognized.
Former Secretary of the Interior Ken Salazar says it poses a threat to wildlife, erosion, and people who live here who have legal rights to collect firewood and let their cattle graze on the property. Harrison and Castilla County are now involved in a legal battle over whether he's allowed to build it.
An outsider with a lot of money that's putting up impenetrable fences should be examined and stopped.
A new bill at the state capitol would do just that, requiring people like William Harrison to get permission to build big fences on Sangre de Cristo land grant properties. Locals say Harrison's fence is more than 8 feet tall and already more than 20 miles long.
This bill provides an individual jurisdiction to the opportunity to review fencing projects that are taller than 5 foot and greater than a mile in length.
Representative Matthew Martinez admits that while the immediate goal is to stop this fence, he hopes to expand the bill to the entire state.
This bill is intended to serve as the beginning of a process to give every other county in Colorado the roadmap to review large fencing projects for their environmental impact and address concerns before they arise.
For Next, I'm Evan Krugel.
Spokesperson for William Harrison declined to comment on the bill today, cited the presence of pending litigation. RTD's slow train summer has chugged along into winter. Now, while RTD has sped up some of the slow zones on light rail, new areas now have slowdowns. You remember when Marshall Zellinger raced an RTD train live on our air and won? Well, today, Marshall ran over to RTD. He actually drove there, I presume, figure of speech. But he went to ask the head of that agency about the slow trains and about state leaders' frustration with RTD and about the agency hiding details about the firing of their police chief.
Slow zones will slow to no zones next week. For 72 hours, from Tuesday through Thursday, RTD will shut down light rail from Southmore to Broadway along I-25 to repair rail burn that is causing trains to go just 10 miles per hour.
Why should someone ride your system if they rely on getting somewhere on time? They should ride our system basically because we provide access to a myriad of different activity sites.
RTD General Manager Deborah Johnson said slow ends to the slow zones on the E, H, R, and D lines along I-25, 225, and Santa Fe is in part because the contractor needed to find a working rail grinder, and also because of the weather.
I'd be remiss in not factoring in that we have exposed rail that is subject to seasons.
During his State of the State speech, Democratic Governor Jared Polis called for better governance of RTD, more accountability, and to get more people where they need to go. Last year, lawmakers almost overhauled the oversight of RTD.
Do you feel like the governor and the state legislature are threatening RTD?
No, I don't think they're threatening. I think basically what they're trying to do is ensure that there is good governance for a vital public service being transportation delivery.
We also talked about the firing of RTD Police Chief Joel Fitzgerald last year. His termination letter says an investigation found he sped more than 100 miles per hour 23 times, and that he and other top command staff responded to calls without wearing body cameras. I asked Johnson why she refused to explain his firing after she signed his termination letter in September, the one we didn't even get our hands on until November.
As relates to minimizing risk and exposure to the enterprise, working in conjunction with legal counsel, it was in the interest of the agency at that time, once again, to ensure that we were doing our due diligence to minimize the exposure to the agency.
Is that corporate talk for you, or worried that you might get sued if you said something?
I wouldn't say it's corporate talk. I speak like this. So once again, in my role, I was minimizing risk and exposure to the Regional Transportation District.
Sorry, go.
We also talked about how RTD is a public agency that receives public tax dollars, and when Johnson believes information is private and not the public's right to know, I also asked her if she watched my race against the 10-mile-per-hour light rail train. Our full conversation's on the next YouTube channel.
It's not corporate speak, Marshall. She just talks like that. So they fended off a state takeover once, but there's still people at the state capitol that think that RTD is so much of a mess that they have to be taken over. So what is their plan to minimize risk to the enterprise and exposure if the state wants to take them over this year?
Well, I know the governor is big on SMART acts. RTD doesn't have to go and present to the legislature about the SMART Act, I don't believe, showing measurable goals and achievements. But I think RTD has to show some sort of proof that they're going in this direction, and then maybe the legislature won't try to do an overhaul, and the governor won't come in and say, hey, legislature, give me a bill to sign that says we're going to add board members that put the state in control. But we've seen things fail at the state legislature many years, and then they'll come back and finally pass. So I think RTD just has to show some positive numbers for maybe the state to back off.
Like, what if they were to beat you in a race?
After this next week, when the light rail's back up and running, and hopefully it's full speed ahead at DU, that could be the case.
Okay, all right. Lace up your shoes. Marshall Zellinger, thank you. When temperatures dropped below zero last weekend, there was a family shelter in Aurora that started to fill up, parents and families coming in out of the cold. That is why this week's Word of Thanks microgiving campaign supports the nonprofit Comitas Crisis Center. Comitas has been around in Aurora for decades. They just recently transitioned into serving solely families. When families came into Comitas' shelter during the deep freeze, most of those families reported that they had been staying in their cars, and it was just too cold when it was below zero to keep doing that. But they said a surprising number of the families coming in said that they had been sheltering together in enclosed bus stops at night. Comitas serves families through a transitional family shelter that gives people a period of months to help get back on their feet. They have a similar shelter, especially for veterans and their families as they work towards self-sufficiency. And then they open up as an emergency shelter whenever it gets really cold. And that's happened 6 times so far this winter. Scan the QR code on your screen or text the word thanks to 303-871-1491 if you'd like to get the link to join me and a bunch of other Coloradans in donating to support Comitas' work. And more than 4,000 of you have signed up to simplify your giving by making a monthly donation to the Word of Thanks Fund. You put in your info once, and we'll take that monthly donation and split among all the nonprofits we feature. It has meant that we've been starting your recent microgiving campaigns with more than $30,000 in donations each week. That is a force for good. Colorado's LGBTQ advocates are expanding their focus, trying to learn more about community needs outside the Denver metro area. And if you do not know this woman's face, I guarantee you, you know her work. The places in Denver shaped by her hand. We remember her legacy coming up. And the return of our favorite Friday question. What's your good news? Next.
Well, after an absolute gift of a day today on the Front Range, we'll have a wintry day tomorrow. We're already seeing some snow showers in the high country, and that will continue as we go overnight. The snow showers will start to reach in here to the Front Range by about 1 o'clock, 2 a.m., spreading down into Denver all the way into tomorrow morning. Should stay fairly consistent until about noon, and then we'll see broken showers and flurries that will likely continue through the entire day all the way until 10 o'clock, and then 8 o'clock tomorrow morning, or on Sunday morning, we are done. The snow totals are not going to blow you away, especially right when you wake up tomorrow morning. It's going to take almost the entire day to get these totals up to the higher ranges. If we do get 3, 4 here on the Front Range, that's what it's going to take all day. By the way, the potential right here at the base of the foothills, places like Golden and Boulder, looking pretty good for some decent snow, but the impacts are going to be because of the temperatures. We'll be in the teens basically the entire snowfall event, and so that's where your impact is going to be on the travel. So even just 2 to 3 inches here in the Denver metro area, the impacts are there because of the cold and the wind. We are a cold day on Sunday, but we clear out, and then the rest of the week, Kyle, looks pretty decent with some sunshine and temperatures right about normal.
Corey, we will take it. Hey, it's a shame that so often when we're talking about our neighbors who happen to be trans, that we're talking about their very existence being politicized. Don't talk about other groups like that. Advocates for the community are trying to better understand trans Coloradans outside the lens of the familiar politics. Our Jaleesa Irizarry explains.
So many people under this roof make decisions that can change lives.
Yes.
Skylar Patron just hopes to change a view of their perspectives.
That's the goal, to make sure that our communities are protected and safe and included.
Patron works for One Colorado, one of the state's largest LGBTQ advocacy groups. Right now, they're rolling out a new program called Transforming the Narrative, looking to shift how people talk about trans issues and who talks about them.
Oftentimes, the rural communities or any communities outside of the Denver metro area are left out of conversations, and they need support, and we want to show up for them and include them in our advocacy.
Patron is creating a statewide group of people from all corners of Colorado to shed light on the issues trans individuals may face in places like the Eastern Plains and Southern Colorado. The goal over the next 6 months is to identify the problems, find solutions, and implement them.
Our trans community is being politicized right now. And so really focusing in on saying, hey, we're going to protect ourselves and we're going to show up for each other at this moment feels really important.
According to the ACLU, so far in 2025, there have been 196 anti-LGBTQ bills introduced in state legislatures across the U.S. Patron is
hopeful.
Their work will keep Colorado off that list. They plan to sit down with lawmakers to share stories and language that should be used when addressing transgender issues. All ways, they hope, to make a change they believe Colorado needs.
The more we can get out there and be present in our community, absolutely, I believe this can save lives.
For Next, I'm Jaleesa Irizarry.
A visionary developer and preservationist who saved some of Colorado's most iconic locations has passed away at the age of 93. Dana Crawford leaves a legacy that you can walk, block by block, in downtown Denver. She led one of the first preservation movements in the U.S., taking old, blighted parts of neighborhoods and turning them into thriving community spaces. She's credited with saving Larimer Square in the 1960s, buying the entire 1,400 block of Larimer to save it from being bulldozed and turned into a highway. That kicked off a decades-long career that saved countless buildings, first in the Lodo area and then in pockets all around our state. Crawford and her business partners championed the renovation of Union Station in recent years, where the Crawford Hotel now bears her name. The flags in front of Union Station will remain at half-staff in her honor. Her longtime business partner, Walt Eisenberg, said, quote, "Dana's mighty spirit will continue to live on as people enjoy spending time at Denver Union Station, Larimer Square, and the Crawford." The stack of tributes piling up for Dana Crawford will be a mile high, like the city she preserved and improved for more than half a century. If you have walked Larimer Square, been to Lodo, stepped inside the revitalized Union Station, and looked up in awe, then you have stood in Dana Crawford's Denver. All the more remarkable, her eye for saving old Denver and making it the center of new Denver, all the more remarkable that she wasn't from here. Among the many lessons offered by the life of Dana Crawford is that you don't have to be a native to come to love a place with your whole heart and to work tirelessly to make it better. She saw promise where other people saw potential parking lots. So many American cities put a wrecking ball to their history when areas got run down and neglected, when it became easier to insult a place than to improve it. And that's another lesson from the life of Dana Crawford. Complaining about a city is easy. You can do that from your couch. Changing a city is hard work. Dana Crawford had the vision and the energy that kept her working to reimagine Denver well into her 90s. We are fortunate to live in her city.
My good news is my daughter just went on a scuba diving trip.
That's either really sweet, he's happy for her, or he's just glad she's out of the house. Our favorite Friday tradition from an unusual location. Check this out, the top of Denver, next. If you happen to look up at the DNF clock tower over the 16th Street Mall today, you might have spotted Marty McFly and Doc Brown on their way to the future or the past. I haven't seen the movie since I was a kid. Perhaps I'll stop by to see the musical, which premiered at the DCPA this week. We asked some Coloradans and Doc and Marty for their good news before they head back to 1955.
All right, so what time is it? We have a really cool building, so love to show it off. We have a working clock.
I'm Don Stevenson.
And I'm Lucas Hallower.
And I play Marty McFly.
And I play Doc Brown.
In Back to the Future, the musical. Wait a minute, no, switch.
That's wrong. That's wrong.
When a show comes through Denver, I have the joy of taking them around to talk to all of you at the news stations all the time. But this is the first time that I've been able to share a local gem from my hometown with the touring cast members.
All right, I got it now. Hi, I'm Don Stevenson, and I play Doc Brown in Back to the Future, the musical.
And I'm Lucas Hallower, and I play Marty McFly.
And we're here on the clock tower in downtown Denver, and we don't know how we got here, and we don't know how to get down.
My good news is I just celebrated a year at my dream job in Denver.
My good news is my daughter just went on a scuba diving trip to Honduras, and she made it back alive.
My good news is my parents get into town this Saturday.
Why are they coming?
My good news is I got to collaborate with all of you guys for Back to the Future and the Clock Tower, which is just a very cool duo.
My good news is that I get to wake up to this lovely view of Denver every single day.
You sleep in the clock tower?
I do sleep in the clock tower.
She does not. That's Mallory Davis. She's one of our directors here. She's amazing. Thank you very much for feedback. We will have that next. Feedback tonight from Joanne, who writes, "Thank you so much for the very well-deserved description of Denver's Dana Crawford." And it's funny because when I first read it as Dana Crawford's Denver, but I suppose it goes both ways. James wrote in to say, "I met her 35 years ago when I was working on a new airport for Denver during the Pena administration. Her passionate and tenacious arguments were difficult for the best of us to ignore. Dana undeniably found and defined the best in Denver history."